Let's get right into it. Number 5, maggot meat was a delicacy. You think your roommate leaving week-old pizza in the fridge is gross? Well, our Paleolithic ancestors would intentionally bury chunks of raw meat in the ground for weeks or even months until it was crawling with maggots. Then they'd dig it up and feast on the whole disgusting mess, maggots and all. This wasn't some desperate survival move either. These ancient humans actually preferred their meat this way. They'd wrap animal carcasses in hide and store them underground or in ponds, waiting for the perfect level of decomposition. When they finally dug up their rotten treasure, the meat would be so putrid it could knock you unconscious from 50 feet away. But here's the wild part. They'd eat those fat, juicy maggots right along with the fermented meat like it was a 5-star meal. The maggots were actually packed with protein and healthy fats that were crucial for survival. Modern Arctic people still practice this today, and visitors consistently report being absolutely horrified watching locals devour squirming larvae with obvious enjoyment. The smell alone would make most of us projectile vomit, but for cavemen, this was fine dining. The fermentation process actually made certain nutrients more available to their bodies. So while we're grossed out by meat that's been in the fridge for 3 days, our ancestors were deliberately rotting theirs for months. If you're enjoying these prehistoric food nightmares, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started with the revolting eating habits of our ancient relatives. Number 4, raw brain smoothies were breakfast. Picture this. You've just killed a mammoth, and instead of grilling up some steaks, you crack open the skull and start slurping out the raw brain tissue like it's a protein shake. That was Tuesday morning for Paleolithic humans. Archaeological evidence shows that our ancestors systematically removed scalps and accessed brain tissue as a priority food source. They didn't just eat brains occasionally either. These organs were considered prime real estate in the prehistoric food chain. The skulls found at ancient sites show clear marks where humans used tools to break through bone and extract every last bit of that gray matter. Brain tissue is incredibly rich in omega-3 fatty acids and other nutrients that were essential for developing those bigger human brains we're so proud of today. But imagine the texture, warm, mushy, and probably still twitching from the recently deceased animal. They'd often eat it fresh, sometimes while the animal was still warm from body heat. The consistency would have been like thick pudding mixed with cottage cheese, except it's gray and came from inside someone's head. Modern people spend hundreds of dollars on brain-boosting supplements, but cavemen were getting theirs straight from the source. They knew brain tissue was nutritional gold, so they'd fight over who got to eat it first after a successful hunt. Comment your location below and let me know what the grossest thing you've ever eaten is compared to these prehistoric delicacies. Number 3, termite mound mining was fine dining. Long before humans discovered agriculture, they were already farming in a way. Except instead of growing vegetables, they were harvesting millions of squirming insects from underground termite colonies. Archaeological evidence from sites like Swartkrans in South Africa shows 1.7 million-year-old bone tools specifically designed for digging into termite mounds. Our ancient relatives would show up at these insect cities with specialized digging sticks, break open the colonies, and feast on everything inside. We're talking about eating adult termites, their eggs, larvae, pupae, and anything else crawling around in there. The technique was passed down through generations like a family recipe. They'd insert a stick into the termite mound, wait for the insects to climb on, then pull it out covered in thousands of protein-packed bugs. Then they'd scrape them off with their teeth and chew up the crunchy, squirming mass. Fossilized human feces from prehistoric sites contain remains of ants, beetle larvae, lice, ticks, and mites, proving this wasn't just occasional snacking. This was a dietary staple. The nutritional payoff was huge, though. Insects provided essential proteins that were impossible to get from their mainly plant-based diet. A single termite mound could feed a family for days, and unlike hunting large animals, harvesting insects was relatively safe and reliable. Today, over 2,000 insect species are consumed around the world, but most of us would rather starve than crunch down on a handful of live termites. Number 2, bone marrow storage containers were prehistoric meal prep. You thought your weekly meal prep was advanced? Cavemen at Kesem Cave near Tel Aviv were storing animal bones wrapped in hide for up to 9 weeks, using them like ancient canned goods. This isn't just speculation either. Researchers found direct evidence that 420,000 years ago, prehistoric humans had figured out sophisticated food preservation techniques that would make modern survivalists jealous. Here's how it worked. After killing an animal, they'd carefully wrap certain bones in the animal's own skin, creating airtight packages. These bone containers would preserve the rich, fatty marrow inside for months without spoiling. When food was scarce, they'd unwrap their stored bones, crack them open, and feast on the preserved marrow inside. But imagine what those packages smelled like after weeks of storage. The outer skin would be dried and leathery, probably crawling with insects. The marrow inside would have the consistency of rancid butter mixed with chunks of congealed fat. The smell would hit you like a punch to the face, but cavemen would crack those bones open and scrape out every last bit of that precious fat. Bone marrow was like prehistoric energy bars, packed with more calories per gram than any protein or carbohydrates they could find. This practice shows that our ancestors weren't just surviving day to day. They were planning ahead, storing food for lean times, and developing complex preservation techniques thousands of years before refrigeration. Before we get to the most disturbing prehistoric eating habit, make sure to share this video with someone who complains about cafeteria food. They need some perspective on what humans used to consider a normal meal. Number 1, chewing on human flesh was survival cuisine. Here's where things get really dark. When food was scarce, our Paleolithic ancestors didn't just hunt animals for dinner. Archaeological evidence from multiple sites shows clear butchery marks on human bones, indicating that cannibalism wasn't some rare taboo practice, but a legitimate survival strategy. These weren't crazed killers either. They were normal humans facing starvation who made calculated decisions about nutrition. The bone markings show they systematically removed muscle tissue, extracted bone marrow, and even accessed brain matter from other humans just like they did with animal prey. But here's what makes it even more disturbing. They were incredibly efficient at it. The cut marks on ancient human bones match exactly the patterns found on animal bones from the same sites. This means they had perfected techniques for processing human bodies for maximum nutritional value. They knew exactly where to cut to get the most meat, how to crack skulls for brain access, and which bones contained the richest marrow. Some researchers believe this practice was so common that it influenced human evolution itself. The fear of being eaten may have driven early humans to develop better weapons, larger group sizes, and more sophisticated social structures. Imagine living in a world where your neighbors might literally have you for dinner if times got tough. The evidence suggests this happened across multiple continents and time periods, making it one of humanity's most widespread prehistoric practices. Modern forensic analysis shows they even had preferences for certain body parts based on nutritional content. They prioritized fatty tissues, organ meats, and bone marrow over regular muscle meat, proving they understood human anatomy well enough to maximize their caloric intake from these grim meals. That's all for today. Subscribe to see more videos about the bizarre realities of human history.